It was the late 1980s. The sun burned over California highways, and the air smelled like gasoline, leather, and rebellion. Rock legend Ozzy Osbourne, the wild frontman of Black Sabbath, was sitting in his mansion's garage, surrounded by guitars, gold records, and 3 motorcycles. But none of them felt real. He wanted something different, something raw, something that didn't sparkle under stage lights. He wanted a Harley Davidson that screamed freedom and danger, not luxury. So one night during a party, he told a friend, "If I'm getting a real Harley, I'm getting it from the real bikers, like the Hells Angels." The room went silent. Everyone stared at him like he'd lost his mind. The Hells Angels weren't a brand. They were a brotherhood feared around the world. Known for their tattoos, loyalty, and brutal honesty, they lived by their own code. They didn't care about fame. They didn't care about money. And most of all, they didn't build bikes for outsiders. But Ozzy wasn't the kind of man who backed down from crazy ideas. He laughed, took a sip of his drink, and said, "Let's see if they've got more attitude than me." The next morning, without telling his manager or security, he got into his car and drove out of Los Angeles, miles away from the comfort of stardom, heading straight toward the desert where a local Hells Angels chapter was rumored to hang out as the highway stretched endlessly ahead. Ozzy rolled down his window, wind slapping his face, and smiled. This wasn't about a bike anymore. This was about respect, the kind you earn face to face, not from applause. He had no idea what was waiting for him at that biker clubhouse. But what happened when Ozzy finally showed up shocked even him. The desert heat shimmered on the horizon as Ozzy's black Cadillac rolled down a dusty, cracked road somewhere outside Oakland, California. The GPS didn't work out here. Not that he needed it. He was following instinct, not directions. Every few miles, he'd pass a sign with faded skull decals, rusted arrows, and words scratched out by bullet holes. The air grew heavier. The world felt different, quieter, wilder. This was the kind of place where respect wasn't asked for. It was earned. Finally, a low rumble filled the silence, the sound of Harley engines. Ozzy slowed his car. Ahead, hidden behind old shipping containers and corrugated iron walls, stood a biker clubhouse. The gate bore the unmistakable red and white logo, a grinning skull with wings. He had found the Hells Angels. He parked his car, killed the engine, and stepped out. Instantly, 20 heads turned his way. Men in leather vests, tattoos crawling up their necks, and steel rings on their fingers stopped what they were doing. Music from a nearby radio died down as one of them turned the volume knob to 0. A man with a long beard and mirrored shades squinted. "You lost." "Rockstar?" he said, his tone flat but sharp. Ozzy smirked, brushing dust from his jacket. "Nah, I came to the right place. I heard you guys build the meanest Harleys in the world." No one laughed. A few exchanged looks, half amused, half irritated. Another biker, taller, heavier, crossed his arms. "We don't do bikes for celebrities. We build them for brothers. And you," he pointed, "ain't one of us." Ozzy could feel the wall of tension closing in, but he didn't flinch. He had stood in front of stadiums packed with 80,000 screaming fans. But this silence, this stare-down, was different. Here, one wrong word could end badly. Still, he took a deep breath and said, "I didn't come here as a celebrity. I came as a man who respects real craftsmanship and real people." The bikers stayed quiet. For a second, nobody moved. Then, one of them, an older guy with silver hair and a scar over his eye, leaned forward and said, "You got guts, Osbourne. Most rich boys wouldn't even step out of the car." Ozzy smiled slightly. "Maybe that's why I don't hang out with most rich boys." A few chuckles broke the tension. Faint but real, the air lightened just enough. The leader, a broad-shouldered man called Reaper, finally spoke. "So you want a custom Harley, huh? The kind we ride?" "Exactly that," Ozzy replied. "No chrome, no glitter. I want something that growls louder than I ever could." The gang looked at one another. There was something about the way Ozzy said it. No arrogance, no fake toughness, why, just pure respect. Reaper took a step closer, his boots crunching the gravel. "We don't take orders. We take loyalty. You want one of ours? You ride with us first. See if you can handle the road." Ozzy nodded without hesitation. When do we leave? The men looked surprised, even impressed. One of them smirked. You're either the bravest man here, or the dumbest. Maybe a little of both, Ozzy laughed. For the first time, genuine laughter echoed across the lot. The day ice had cracked just a little. That's when Reaper pointed to an empty stool near the entrance. Sit, drink, let's see if the Prince of Darkness can handle daylight in our world. Ozzy walked over, sat down, and accepted the bottle handed to him. It wasn't fancy, just cheap whiskey in a scratched glass, but he raised it with a grin and said, "To the angels of hell." The bikers roared in laughter and clinked bottles. For the next few hours, stories were shared, wild rides, crashes, scars, laughter that came from the gut. And slowly the tension melted away. By sunset, Ozzy was one of them, at least for the night. He didn't talk about fame or money, he listened. He learned. He respected their silence as much as their words. When he finally stood to leave, Reaper stopped him. You still want that Harley? Ozzy nodded. More than ever. Reaper's grin widened. Then be ready tomorrow. Midnight. We ride. Ozzy smiled, dusted off his jeans, and said, I'll be here. He walked back to his car under the blood-red sunset, engine growling low, adrenaline humming in his veins. He had just been invited into the world no outsider ever entered. And somehow, he'd earned their respect, but what they made for him later would shock him more than any concert, any fame, any moment in his entire career. The roar of engines outside the warehouse grew louder, a rolling thunder of Harley Davidsons that could make your chest vibrate. Ozzy turned his head toward the sound, that familiar wicked grin creeping back onto his face. I think the cavalry's here, he muttered. The heavy steel doors groaned open and in rode the Hells Angels in a wave of chrome, tattoos and attitude. The leader, a massive man with a beard like fire and a leather vest covered in patches, dismounted and stared straight at Ozzy. The air grew heavy, the kind of silence that carries danger. You the rock star who wants a bike? He asked, voice deep enough to rattle bones. Ozzy smirked, pulling off his sunglasses. Nah, mate, I'm just the bat-eating lunatic looking for a ride from hell. The men laughed, but only for a second. Then the leader's face hardened again. This ain't no rock concert, Ozzy. You don't order a Hells Angels bike. You earn it. That statement flipped the tone of the meeting. Ozzy realized this wasn't about money or fame. The Hells Angels didn't build bikes for anyone who couldn't ride like them, think like them, or live like them. One of the bikers, a grizzled old man with chains hanging from his vest, stepped forward. You see, Rockstar, every man who owns one of our machines has oil on his hands, scars on his knuckles, and stories in his blood. You got any of that, or just songs on the radio? Ozzy didn't flinch. He looked around the room, walls lined with engines, gas tanks painted with skulls, and flags that reeked of rebellion. For a moment his eyes softened. You think music and machines are different? He said quietly. They're not. Both are born from chaos, built from pain, and fueled by fire. The words hung in the air. A few bikers exchanged glances, surprised. The leader walked up close, face to face with Ozzy, and said, All right then, prove it. They led him to the back of the warehouse, where a half-assembled Harley sat gleaming under dim lights. You want this? You helped build it, the leader growled. Ozzy took off his leather jacket, rolled up his sleeves, and got to work. The next few hours were nothing short of surreal. The Prince of Darkness, one of the biggest rock icons in the world, was now elbow-deep in grease, tightening bolts, aligning frames, sanding chrome. Sweat dripped from his forehead, but he didn't stop. As the bike began to take shape, even the toughest angels started to nod in approval. They saw something raw, were not the rock star, but the man. Ozzy wasn't doing it for attention or PR. He was doing it for respect. At one point, one of the younger members muttered, Never thought I'd see Ozzy Osbourne build his own Harley. The leader shot him a look, then turned to Ozzy. You know what? Maybe you got some of that fire after all. By sunset, the bike was ready. Matte black with blood-red accents, carved skulls on the tank, and the words Ride to Hell engraved on the exhaust. Ozzy ran his hand along the seat, his reflection dancing in the chrome. She's beautiful, he whispered. The leader smiled for the first time that day. She's yours, Ozzy, but there's one last test. Ozzy looked up. Test? The man pointed toward the open road beyond the warehouse. We ride tonight. No cameras, no bodyguards, just us. If you can keep up, you earn it." The roar of engines filled the air once more. Ozzy kicked his Harley to life. The machine growled like a beast unleashed. He smirked, eyes glinting under the orange glow of dusk. "Let's ride then, boys," he said, revving the throttle. "Let's see if the Prince of Darkness can dance with the devils of the road." And with that, the gang took off. A storm of leather, fire, and fury. Ozzy followed close behind, his laughter echoing through the night. The engines thundered into the night like wild beasts let loose from a cage. The desert air was thick with smoke and gasoline as Ozzy gripped the handlebars, his heart pounding in rhythm with the Harley's growl. Ahead of him, 20 Hell's Angels roared down the open highway, their jackets flashing skull insignias in the moonlight. It wasn't just a ride, it was a test of spirit, fear, and endurance. Ozzy knew it. Every twist of the throttle was a challenge to prove he belonged there, among outlaws who lived and died by the road. The leader, Brick, a giant of a man with burning red hair and eyes like steel, rode beside him. "Keep up, Rockstar," he yelled over the wind. "No one slows down for fame out here." Ozzy laughed, the wind tearing at his hair. "You think I came here to be slow?" he shouted back, pushing the bike harder. The engine screamed, and the Harley surged forward, flames of exhaust bursting like dragon breath. The group thundered across the desert, headlights slicing through the darkness. Every bump and turn tested Ozzy's grip, but he didn't falter. He was in his element, chaos, adrenaline, and danger. It was no stage, but it felt like a performance. The roar of the engines was his music, the highway his crowd. An hour into the ride, they reached a narrow canyon road known among the angels as the Devil's Spine. One wrong move here, and you'd be a smear on the rocks below. The leader turned his head, smirking. Let's see if the Prince of Darkness can dance on the edge of death. Without warning, they sped up, weaving between jagged cliffs, leaning into impossible turns. Dust and gravel shot up like sparks. Ozzy stayed right behind Brick, his eyes locked on the taillight ahead. His mind was clear, laser-focused. One mistake could cost him his life, but backing down would cost him something worse. Respect. Halfway through the canyon, one of the bikers lost control and skidded sideways, sparks flying. Ozzy swerved hard, narrowly avoiding the crash. The fallen biker tumbled onto the roadside, clutching his leg. The others didn't stop, and not yet. But Ozzy did. He hit the brakes, jumped off, and ran toward the downed man. "You all right, mate?" he yelled, helping him up. The biker grunted, shocked that Ozzy, the rock legend, had actually stopped. Moments later, the others circled back, engines idling. Brick dismounted, glaring. "Why'd you stop?" he demanded. Ozzy looked him straight in the eyes. "Because out here, respect ain't about how fast you ride. It's about not leaving your brother bleeding on the road." The silence that followed was heavy. The only sound was the ticking of cooling engines. Then slowly, Brick's expression changed. He nodded. "You've got balls, Osbourne. Not many men stop on Devil's Spine. You just earned more than a bike tonight." The group repaired the damaged Harley, and soon, they were back on the road. Slower this time, more united. Ozzy rode in the middle now, not as an outsider, but as one of them. The wind howled around him, and for a brief moment he felt truly free. No cameras, no fame, no pressure. Just man, machine, and road. Hours later, the group reached their final destination, a deserted truck stop glowing faintly under neon lights. They parked in formation, engines cutting off one by one. The air was thick with the smell of oil and burnt rubber. Brick stepped forward, lighting a cigarette. "Ozzy," he said, exhaling smoke, "most men who come here try to buy our respect. You built it. You rode for it. And you stopped when it mattered." Another biker tossed Ozzy a black leather patch, the kind only worn by those who've earned their place. "You're family now, brother," he said. Ozzy caught the patch, staring at it in disbelief. The skull insignia reflected in his eyes. For once, the man who'd stood in front of millions of fans didn't know what to say. He finally smiled, tired but alive. "You boys ride hard, but you've got heart," Brick grinned. "That's the only way to survive out here, Prince of Darkness." As they all laughed, the sound of engines slowly faded into the desert night. Ozzy sat on his Harley, staring at the horizon. He had come for a custom bike. But what he found was something far greater, a brotherhood that didn't care about his fame, only his courage. The sun crept over the desert horizon, painting the world in gold and orange. The air smelled of dust and gasoline, the scent of the night before still lingering. Ozzy sat on his Harley, watching the light crawl across the road. His hands were still stained with oil, his mind still buzzing with the adrenaline of the ride. Around him, the Hells Angels stirred awake, some polishing bikes, others sipping strong black coffee from metal mugs. The night had tested every ounce of his courage, and somehow, he'd earned their respect. But the day wasn't done with him yet. Brick, the leader, walked up, his boots crunching against the gravel. "Sleep well, Rockstar?" he asked, a grin hiding under his beard. Ozzy smirked. "Sleep after that ride? Mate, I'm still hearing engines in me head." The men laughed, and Brick nodded approvingly. "Good. Means you're alive." He paused, then added, "Come with me. There's something you need to see." He led Ozzy to the far end of the lot where a large black tarp covered something massive. Two bikers stood on either side, their faces solemn. Brick grabbed the edge of the tarp and pulled it away, revealing a Harley unlike any Ozzy had ever seen. It gleamed in the rising sun. Deep chrome body, red flame detailing, a cross carved on the gas tank, and a single phrase etched in steel near the seat. "Ride forever, Brother Luke." Ozzy stared, silent. "Who's Luke?" he asked finally. Brick's face hardened. "He was one of us. A brother. The best rider I ever knew. Couple of months ago, a drunk driver hit him on the open road. Killed him instantly." Ozzy looked back at the bike, understanding now why it carried that heavy energy. "This was his?" Brick shook his head. "No, it was supposed to be. Luke dreamed of building the perfect Harley, one that could take him coast to coast without a break. He designed it himself. We were halfway done when he died." Ozzy ran his hand over the tank, his voice low. "And you finished it?" "Yeah," Brick said. "But not for us. For someone who'd ride it the way he would have. Fearless, wild, with soul. That's why we didn't sell it. Not to celebrities. Not to rich collectors. We waited. And last night you proved you're that kind of man." Ozzy blinked, speechless. For the first time in a long while, the loudest man in rock was silent. Brick continued, "We don't give these bikes away, Ozzy. We pass them on. To people who remind us why we ride in the first place." The words hit deep. Ozzy had come looking for a piece of machinery, but what he'd found was a legacy. A brotherhood born not of fame but of loyalty, pain, and respect. Brick handed him a small key with the same engraving, "Ride forever." "This was Luke's, now it's yours." Ozzy took it, his hands trembling slightly. "Mate, I don't know what to say." "Don't say anything," Brick replied. "Just ride it like it was built to be ridden, with fire in your chest and no fear in your heart." The other bikers gathered around, their faces solemn but proud. One of them muttered, "Luke would have liked you." Ozzy smiled faintly. "Then I'll ride for him." They pushed the bike into the sunlight. The engine started with a deep, thunderous growl and smoother, cleaner, angrier. The flames painted on the tank seemed to dance as the sun hit them. As Ozzy revved it up, the wind caught his hair, and for a second he felt a surge of something pure, not fame, not ego, but connection. The road wasn't just asphalt anymore. It was memory, brotherhood, and tribute. Brick clapped him on the shoulder. "You earned this, Ozzy. Not with money, not with fame, but with heart." Ozzy nodded, eyes glinting. "I came here for a bike. I'm leaving with a story." He kicked the stand up, rolled his Harley forward, and turned toward the open desert road. The gang watched as he pulled the throttle and shot off into the horizon, dust swirling behind him like smoke from a fire that refused to die. The roar of the engine echoed across the desert, wild, defiant, and alive. And though Ozzy rode alone, he could almost hear the ghosts of Hell's Angels riding beside him, Luke among them. The desert stretched endlessly ahead, an open road carved through dust and time. The wind tore at Ozzy's leather jacket as he sped across the highway, the Ride Forever Harley roaring beneath him like a living beast. Every twist of the throttle sent vibrations through his chest, but it wasn't just the machine, and it was the soul inside it. That morning, Ozzy didn't ride home. He rode to nowhere. He let the road decide where he should go, following the hum of the tires and the memories of the night before. The bike glided smooth and powerful, as if it knew exactly who had once dreamed of riding it. Luke. At a gas station on the outskirts of Nevada, a young man recognized him. "Wait, are you Ozzy Osbourne?" he stammered, pulling out his phone. Ozzy smiled tiredly but kindly. Yeah, mate. Just me and me new girl here. He tapped the Harley's tank, and the metal gleamed under the sun. Within minutes, a small crowd gathered, travelers, bikers, and truckers. Someone asked about the bike. Ozzy told them the short version. It belonged to a brother who never made it home. I'm just riding it for him now. A bystander filmed the whole thing and posted it online. Within hours, the video exploded. Millions of views. Comments flooding in. This is the real Ozzy, humble and human. Respect for honoring a fallen rider. That bike sounds like it's carrying a soul. By nightfall, Ride Forever was trending worldwide, but Ozzy didn't care about the fame. That ride had changed something deep inside him. He wasn't the unbreakable rock star in those moments. He was a man remembering the value of loyalty, pain, and second chances. 2 days later, he finally pulled up to his home in Los Angeles. The mansion gates opened slowly as his family came rushing out. Sharon gasped the moment she saw him, sunburned, dusty, and grinning like a kid. "Where the hell have you been, Ozzy?" He laughed, swinging off the bike. "Riding with angels, love." She raised an eyebrow. "You mean the Hell's Angels?" He nodded. "Aye, turns out they're not all hell. Some of them are heaven, too." That night, as the family went to sleep, Ozzy sat alone in his garage, staring at the Harley. The moonlight danced across its chrome, and for a second, he could have sworn he heard distant engines. Faint echoes of the ride. "Rest easy, Luke," he whispered. "I'll keep her roaring." Weeks passed. The viral story kept growing. News outlets called it the Redemption Ride, and bikers across the world began carving Ride Forever onto their tanks. Even some Hell's Angels chapters posted photos of Ozzy's ride with the caption, "Respect earned, never bought." Then one evening, just as the sun dipped low, Ozzy heard the unmistakable rumble of Harley engines outside his gate. He stepped out, and there they were, the Hell's Angels. Brick at the front, flanked by half a dozen riders. The neighbors peeked nervously through their windows, but Ozzy just grinned. "Didn't expect to see you boys in Beverly Hills," he said. Brick smirked. "We don't usually ride where the coffee costs $20, but we had one more thing to give you." From his vest, Brick pulled out a small, worn envelope. He handed it to Ozzy. Inside was a folded letter, handwritten, faded, but powerful. It was from Luke. "If you're reading this, it means my bike found someone worthy enough to ride it. I don't care who you are. Just don't let the road make you forget who you used to be. Every mile you ride, remember someone out there wishes they still could. Ride wild, ride true. And when the wind hits your face, that's me right there beside you." Ozzy's eyes glistened. He looked up, speechless. Brick said quietly, "We found that letter when we cleaned his locker. Been saving it for the man who'd earned the bike." Ozzy swallowed hard, nodding. "You boys, you don't just build bikes. You build legacies." Brick smiled. "We don't ride for fame, Ozzy. We ride for ghosts, for brothers, for life." The group stayed a while, sharing stories and laughter under the dim orange sky. Before leaving, Brick turned and said, "Oh, and one more thing. We saw the video. World's calling it Ozzy's Redemption Ride. Not bad for a rock legend, huh?" Ozzy chuckled. "Nah, mate. That wasn't redemption. That was respect." The Hell's Angels revved their engines one last time and rode off into the distance, their taillights glowing red like fireflies disappearing into the dark. Ozzy stood there until the sound faded completely. Then he looked at the Harley, smiled, and whispered, "Ride forever, Luke. We did it." Weeks passed since the visit from the Hell's Angels, but the roar of that night never really left Ozzy's mind. Every time he looked at the Ride Forever Harley sitting in his garage, he felt something shift inside him, a reminder that fame fades, but brotherhood doesn't. The world, however, wasn't done talking about it. The video from the gas station had already hit 30 million views, with fans from every corner of the world posting their own stories of respect, loss, and loyalty. News headlines called it the ride that changed Ozzy Osbourne. For once, the man known for chaos and madness was being praised for quiet strength. One morning, Ozzy sat in his home studio, walls lined with gold records, but his attention fixed on the Harley parked by the glass window. Sharon entered, holding her coffee. "You know, you could turn that story into a song," she said. "People need to hear what you learned out there." Ozzy looked at her, then back at the bike. No song could ever do it justice, love. But maybe a message could. That afternoon, he posted a short video on his official channel. No music, no lights. Just Ozzy sitting beside the Harley speaking directly into the camera. I've spent my whole life chasing noise and crowds, fame, madness. But a few weeks ago, I met a group of men who reminded me of something real. They taught me that respect isn't given to you because of who you are. It's earned by how you ride through life. One of their brothers, Luke, built this bike but never lived to ride it. I didn't buy it, I earned it. And now, every time I start the engine, I remember him. So if you're out there watching this, don't waste your miles chasing fame or money. Chase meaning. Ride with people who'd stop for you if you fell. He paused, his voice low but steady. And if you ever feel lost, just listen to the wind. Sometimes it carries the voices of those who never made it home. The video ended with the Harley's engine roaring to life, the camera panning up to the sky as the sound faded into the distance. Within 24 hours, it went viral again. But this time it wasn't just bikers or fans watching. Veterans, travelers, truckers, and even police officers shared the clip with captions like, "This isn't about Ozzy, it's about honor." A legend reminding us what respect means. Ozzy didn't reply to comments or do interviews. He didn't need to. The message had already become something bigger than him. One night, as he stood in his backyard looking at the stars, Sharon joined him quietly. "You know what, Ozzy?" I think Luke would have been proud. Ozzy smiled faintly, eyes reflecting the night sky. "I think he's riding up there somewhere, probably laughing at me trying to keep up." They both laughed softly. The kind of laugh that carries warmth, not noise. A week later, Ozzy attended a motorcycle charity event. Unannounced, no security, no PR cameras. He showed up in a plain leather jacket, the Ride Forever Harley gleaming beneath him. When he parked, the crowd went silent, not out of shock, but out of respect. A veteran approached, saluting him. "You reminded us all, mate. We don't ride to escape life. We ride so life doesn't escape us." Ozzy nodded, shaking his hand. "That's what it's all about, brother." As he revved the bike to leave, he looked back once more and said into the mic, "No matter who you are or where you're from, keep riding with heart, because one day someone will remember the sound of your engine." The crowd cheered, engines roared, and for a fleeting moment, it felt like the world was breathing in sync. One heartbeat, one road, one message. And as Ozzy disappeared into the sunset, the words "Ride Forever" gleamed across the tank, not as a phrase but as a promise.